Benvinguts al seminari INTO 2020, l'edició número 15 d'aquest seminari. El tòpic principal del seminari d'enguany és els models de negoci disruptius a la indústria turística. Com ja sabeu tots, la situació actual de la pandèmia ens ha fet moure'ns a un format purament online. Per tant, estem aquí tots reunits en aquesta sala de Zoom. M'agradaria iniciar la sessió, jo presentant-me com a moderador, soc Álvaro, gerent de la Fundació i primer de tot us voldria explicar com funcionarà el servei d'interpretació i traducció que està disponible actualment a l'eina. L'eina Zoom té una opció que se diu Interpretation. Ara ha quedat activada, la podeu veure a la barra inferior al costat dreta. Si feu clic sobre aquesta opció, podeu tant tenir l'opció de l'àudio en anglès o la traducció al castellà. Molt bé. Una vegada aquí teniu la presentació també de com és el format en altres dispositius que no siguin desktop, com pot ser el tablet, per exemple. I trobeu que als tablets hi ha una opció de menú, a la qual també hi ha la secció Language Interpretation, i aquí també podeu escollir l'idioma dels dos disponibles que tenim actualment. Molt bé, doncs passam a introduir el vicepresident Juan Pedro Yllanes, vicepresident i conseller de Transició, Energètica i Sectors Productius, que donarà el discurs institucional a nivell del govern de les Illes Balears.
Sembla que hi ha algun problema de connexió. De moment no... Ara, ja està connectat.
Bon dia, vicepresident, conseller, mos sentiu?
Sí, ahora viene. Está llegando. Ya está. Sí, ya está todo, está bien.
Bon dia, vicepresident, conseller Juan Pedro Yllanes, conseller de Transició, Energètica i Sectors Productius del govern de les Illes Balears. El conseller farà la introducció al seminari, la inauguració del seminari INTO. Endavant, conseller.
Bon dia a totes i tots. És un gran plaer, donar-los la benvinguda a una nova edició del Seminari Internacional d'Innovació i Turisme. Un seminari que enguany arriba a la 15a edició amb una temàtica i format que s'adapta al nou paradigma derivat de la crisi sanitària de la Covid-19 i que s'emmarca en el Pla de Reactivació Econòmica de les Illes Balears. Tenim molt clar que la indústria turística és un sector clau per a la nostra economia, però el seu futur es troba en una situació crítica a causa d'una pandèmia que ha colpejat molt seriosament a la nostra comunitat. Però també sabem que sense innovació no hi ha futur i que el sector turístic patirà una enorme transformació gràcies a noves formes de turisme que encara no hem vist néixer, però que estan a punt de revolucionar-lo. Fa temps que parlem d'innovació, però ara més que mai tenim l'oportunitat de ser capdavanters en un negoci que coneixem de primera mà i que portem anys d'avantatge respecte d'altres competidors. L'objectiu del govern és sortir reforçats de la crisi de la Covid-19, però per aconseguir-ho és necessari explotar un model turístic molt més innovador, amb propostes de valor que tinguin com a pedra angular la tecnologia i la digitalització, perquè tots els avanços en innovació turística ens ajudaran a reforçar la nostra economia. És per aquest motiu que la Direcció General d'Innovació d'aquest govern ha volgut centrar l'edició d'enguany del seminari en l'anàlisi de models de negoci disruptius dins la indústria turística, amb un clar objectiu: mostrar que les tecnologies emergents poden ajudar a aconseguir un model turístic més segur, més sostenible, més competitiu i de qualitat. Ara més que mai, tots, govern i empreses, siguin startups, pimes o multinacionals, han de posar el focus en la innovació, ser avantguardistes i apostar pel canvi i la transformació si volem donar resposta als reptes i oportunitats que l'economia de les illes està experimentant. Moltíssimes gràcies a totes i tots de nou per l'assistència a aquest Seminari Internacional d'Innovació i Turisme. Estic segur que la feina serà molt productiva, que la feina serà molt interessant per programar el futur del principal motor econòmic de les Illes Balears, i ara les deixo en molt bones mans, en les mans de la directora general d'Innovació del govern de les Illes Balears, la senyora Núria Riera, i insisteixo que sigui un èxit aquesta reunió del Seminari Internacional d'Innovació i Turisme. Moltíssimes gràcies de nou a totes i tots.
Moltes gràcies al doctor Joan Enric Capellà, miembro del Comité Científico de Objetivos del Seminario desde el punto de vista empresarial. Doctor Joan.
Hola, buen día. ¿Se me escucha bien? Sí, Álvaro. Gracias. El sector turístico y en especial el de Baleares lleva muchas décadas basado en modelos que han demostrado grandes rentabilidades. Las cifras de incremento de turistas a nivel global pues no paran de crecer, y así como crece la demanda, la oferta acorde tampoco deja de crecer. En este sentido, vamos viendo cómo las grandes corporaciones mundiales cada vez son más grandes, pero a su vez también crecen las medianas y las pequeñas, por no hablar de la vasta red de pymes que hacen que aún tengamos un sector con un grado de atomización muy elevado comparado con otros sectores productivos. Y cuando hablamos del sector, no nos olvidemos que esto está afectando a todos los ámbitos del sistema turístico: alojamiento, transporte, intermediación, actividades en destino, proveedores de tecnología, gestión de espacios públicos, así como también el sector lo conforman pues, los empresarios, ¿no?, de empresa o autónomos, ¿no?, pero también los trabajadores, la administración, los sindicatos, los políticos, los investigadores, los docentes de ramo. No obstante, las voces que han ido criticando los modelos basados en el volumen y la masificación también se han ido multiplicando con los años. Voces no solo reivindicativas de un antiturismo sin alternativas claras, sino voces dentro del propio sector empujando y reorientando la demanda hacia la puesta en valor de lo local o la preponderancia de la calidad frente a la cantidad, o el slow tourism, por afinidad a otros movimientos slow que hay por el mundo. Y todo ello va acorde a un cambio progresivo en la demanda, cuyas tendencias son favorables a estas voces críticas y a las iniciativas emprendedoras que iniciaron y han continuado esta nueva corriente, o más bien lo llamemos un paradigma filosófico de aplicación socioeconómica. Todo ello ha desembocado en empresas que se han creado o que han mutado, a modelos de negocio disruptivos frente a los modelos clásicos. Modelos basados en innovación social, innovación tecnológica o innovación de producto. Modelos alejados del fordismo keynesiano y más cerca de las comunidades locales y del respeto por el entorno. Modelos que pretenden aportar valor más allá de la cuenta de resultados y en cuyo epicentro se encuentra naturalmente la rentabilidad, pero acompañada del bien común. Y este bien común es un aspecto central en muchos de los modelos disruptivos. Ante la situación que estamos viviendo de crisis sanitaria, que ha derivado en crisis socioeconómica, está por ver qué retos nos vienen por delante y en qué medida el impacto de la era post-COVID-19 puede afectar a los modelos de negocio tradicionales. En Baleares, especialmente ha triunfado aquello de ¿para qué vamos a cambiar si siempre nos ha ido tan bien así? No obstante, lo que viene por delante es incertidumbre. Nadie tiene una bola de cristal y puede desvelar el futuro. Y esta cuestión está abriendo la mente a nuevos planteamientos, lo que puede significar también abrirse a nuevos modelos. Por eso, el INTO de este año es muy atractivo para el sector empresarial, ya que durante las jornadas que hay programadas se pondrán en escena empresas cuyos modelos de negocio han sido disruptivos y están aportando un alto valor añadido en el sector. Modelos que hasta la fecha parecían orientados a nichos de mercado, pero que el panorama incierto que tenemos delante puede elevar estos modelos a cotas más altas de aceptación en el mercado y su expansión sería de gran interés. Sobre todo los que tienen que ver con aquello del bien común y la economía del bien común. Por eso, el foco de INTO de este año tiene tanto interés. Tendremos la oportunidad de escuchar iniciativas empresariales que son reales, algunas desde hace poco y otras desde hace más tiempo, pero todas ellas nos ilustrarán con sus modelos disruptivos para que reflexionemos hacia dónde debemos ir. Algunos llevamos años reclamando reflexión, pero sobre todo acción respecto al modelo que queremos en Baleares. Ya se ha hablado muchísimo de ello, pero necesitamos actuar. Ya está bien de palabras, hay que pasar a los hechos. Hasta la fecha nos hemos encontrado más bien con puertas cerradas, oídos sordos y sobre todo aquello de, y reitero, ¿para qué vamos a cambiar si siempre nos ha ido tan bien así? Ha habido muchos foros, pero ha habido poca acción. Con la crisis actual, que está haciendo tambalear los cimientos de los modelos más afianzados de la historia, igual el COVID-19 está colateralmente favoreciendo la receptividad de estas reflexiones y la apertura de mente en los empresarios, pero no solo en los empresarios, también en los trabajadores, los dirigentes políticos, la administración y tantos otros colaboradores necesarios. Si así fuera, quedémonos con lo bueno y bienvenido sea. Que disfrutemos este INTO 2020.
Muchas gracias, doctor Joan Enric. Me gustaría darle la palabra ahora a la señora Antònia Alomar, directora de la Agencia de Estrategia Turística de les Illes Balears. Antònia, adelante.
Bon dia a tothom. Me sentiu bé? Sí? Perfecte. Bon dia. Primer de tot, és un plaer participar en nom de l'equip en aquesta inauguració del seminari INTO 2020 i m'agradaria donar les gràcies a l'organització per haver-me convidat en aquesta inauguració. Com ha dit el vicepresident Yllanes, el seminari INTO d'enguany cobra una importància especial donada la conjuntura mundial en què ens trobam i que afecta tan durament en el sector turístic. Per això estic segura que totes les aportacions que podrem escoltar durant les diferents jornades que hi ha programades seran sumament importants per afrontar un futur incert, com ha dit el doctor Joan Enric Capellà, i per impulsar la innovació en el sector turístic i, en definitiva, contribuir a la millora de la competitivitat en el nostre destí. És en espais com aquests, en espais de debat, on podem compartir experiències i així començar a donar resposta als nous reptes, oportunitats i desafiaments als quals s'afronta l'economia de les Illes Balears. Des de l'Agència d'Estratègia Turística compartim amb INTO aquest objectiu comú d'avançar cap a la millora de la competitivitat a les Illes Balears. I per això fem feina una estratègia turística per al nostre destí, basada en dos pilars fonamentals. Primer és la sostenibilitat i el segon és la millora del posicionament a nivell internacional. Quant a la sostenibilitat, crec que tots que estem aquí coincidim que és un camí fonamental quan parlem de models turístics. La sostenibilitat no ha de ser ja una opció, sinó una obligació per a qualsevol empresa turística i, per descomptat, per als destins. I em refereixo a una sostenibilitat entesa en els seus tres vessants, la territorial, la mediambiental i la socioeconòmica. Perquè només així començarem i podrem generar riquesa per al territori i per la seva gent, podrem millorar la qualitat de l'ocupació i es mantindrà la competitivitat de la destinació turística. Crec que les Illes Balears són líders a Espanya en matèria de sostenibilitat turística i prova d'això són iniciatives i regulacions com l'impost de turisme sostenible o la regulació d'accessos turístics en determinades zones de les illes. Som un destí compromès amb aquest objectiu i des de l'ETIP continuarem avançant en aquesta línia. A més, l'agència ha fet una aposta ferma per la innovació i el coneixement, essencial per al turisme de demà. La transformació digital en el sector turístic és fonamental per avançar cap a nous models de negoci i cap a models més sostenibles. A l'ETIP comptam amb una àrea específica d'estadística i recerca des de la que fem feina en projectes basats en aportar intel·ligència turística mitjançant Big Data o dades massives. Per això, han començat a recollir i generar noves fonts de dades de l'activitat turística, aplicar les eines d'intel·ligència i d'anàlisi de negoci i volem compartir els resultats que es generin d'una forma dinàmica i actualitzada amb els diferents sectors interessats. Com podem veure, tenim grans reptes al davant, reptes en els quals turisme i innovació han d'anar de la mà i on les noves tecnologies jugaran un paper fonamental. Només em resta felicitar-los per l'organització d'aquest seminari, especialment en unes condicions tan complexes com les actuals, i de desitjar-los que sigui tot un èxit. Moltíssimes gràcies.
Moltes gràcies. Doy la palabra a la doctora Marta Jacob, miembro también del comité científico. Marta, adelante.
Hola, buenos días a todos y muchas gracias por estar ahí. ¿Se me oye bien? Sí. Vale, bueno, yo en principio voy a empezar recordando un poco los objetivos generales del INTO, los objetivos científicos. Básicamente, cuando se inició el seminario INTO, los objetivos que se propusieron fueron fomentar la transferencia de conocimiento del sector público de I+D hacia el sector privado turístico, dar a conocer y fomentar la colaboración público-privada en actividades de I+D+I en turismo, e identificar aquellos ejemplos de emprendedores, de modelos de negocio innovadores que se habían basado en actividades de I+D previas, públicas o privadas y que respondían a necesidades del mercado y que el mercado valoraba y tenían éxito en el mercado. Y en cuanto a esta 15ª edición del INTO sobre modelos disruptivos de negocio, bueno, básicamente el comité científico se planteó 3 objetivos. En primer lugar, fomentar la transferencia de los resultados de la investigación y más en turismo sobre tecnologías disruptivas o que pudieran dar lugar a modelos disruptivos de negocio en turismo del sector público de I+D hacia el sector privado turístico. Y para ello vamos a ver ejemplos de esa transferencia que ha dado lugar a nuevas oportunidades de negocio que el mercado ha valorado y que han tenido éxito, como por ejemplo la empresa Glutify en la sesión 4, con una investigadora, Estefanía García, que ha generado un modelo de negocio que provee servicios de certificación al sector de restauración y hotelero para diferenciarse en la competencia y atraer nuevos segmentos de mercado. Un segundo objetivo específico de este INTO es identificar aquellas áreas donde se está generando conocimiento nuevo, conocimiento que permite generar modelos de negocio que fomenten la competitividad y la sostenibilidad del destino turístico y que han dado lugar pues, también a tecnologías disruptivas. Y un ejemplo lo veremos con la ponencia, por ejemplo, de la doctora Tracy Harwood, que es profesora de Cultura Digital en la Montfort University, en la sesión inaugural de hoy, o, por ejemplo, con la ponencia del catedrático Xavier Font de la Surrey University, en la sesión 1 sobre modelos disruptivos de negocio en la gestión de destinos turísticos. Y el tercer y último objetivo que nos hemos planteado es conocer de primera mano ejemplos de modelos de negocios disruptivos en los distintos subsectores turísticos, por eso hay una sesión dedicada a la intermediación, la sesión 2, con empresas como Travel Compositor, Travel y Hotel Linking, en la sesión 2 de alojamiento, de ocio y restauración, en la sesión 4 con modelos como, por ejemplo, el modelo disruptivo de Time Market, que conjuga empresas creativas, culturales y de restauración, o Glutify, y luego también modelos disruptivos de negocio en la gestión de destinos, que veremos, por ejemplo, el ejemplo de la isla de Lanzarote. Y vamos a ver cómo se han generado nuevo conocimiento, o bien sobre el turista, sobre la cultura, sobre el medio ambiente o sobre la gestión empresarial, y el desarrollo de tecnologías disruptivas específicas en las que se han basado. Por ejemplo, tecnologías de inteligencia artificial, Big Data, tecnologías de blockchain u otras. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora Marta Jacob. Ahora le doy paso al muy honorable rector de la Universitat de les Illes Balears, el doctor Llorenç Huguet Roger. Rector.
Moltes gràcies. Bon dia a totes i a tots els que participeu en aquest seminari INTO de models de negoci disruptius en la indústria turística i se'm demana que parli de manera institucional des de la universitat. Primer voldria començar amb un agraïment tant a la senyora Núria Riera com en particular també Marta Jacob, que són les dues persones que més hem parlat d'aquest projecte, d'aquest seminari, i que d'alguna manera la seva composició, la seva confecció, jo crec que augura un èxit en quant a tot el que pugui ser transferència de coneixements, intentar definir objectius conjunts i sobretot aprofitar l'oportunitat que sempre donen o obren camí desastres com aquesta pandèmia per intentar repensar, tenir temps per veure cap on enfocar el futur. Des de la universitat, com a institució que genera i fomenta coneixement, el que volem és contribuir en aquesta quàdruple hèlice, a contribuir a aquesta transferència de coneixements i d'experiències cap a la innovació en el món turístic. Jo m'agradaria fer un paral·lelisme en com s'han anat desenvolupant les societats en cada moment amb els recursos que més o manco s'anaven potenciant. Jo estic content que la lliçó inaugural parli de cultura digital perquè em sembla que és un dels elements importants que s'han de tenir en compte a definir el futur no només del turisme, sinó bàsicament de tot el desenvolupament social i econòmic de les societats. Mirin, en el segle XIX hi va haver-hi dos elements que també van ser disruptius, van ser importants, van marcar un canvi que hem viscut, com van ser el carbó i també el vapor. En el segle XX també tenim dos elements importants, dues revolucions que van marcar per un cantó l'electricitat i per l'altre el motor d'explosió, que va significar també un increment important i una facilitació de tots els sistemes de transport. I ara, al segle XXI, ens trobam en dues revolucions que estan convergint, com és la revolució digital i també la revolució energètica, que estan convergint sobre el tema del medi ambient i també diria amb el tema del territori, que són aspectes molt importants també a tenir en compte dintre del futur del turisme. Per tant, des de la universitat, agrair aquesta col·laboració que podem tenir amb la conselleria, amb la vicepresidència, per poder participar activament en aquest fòrum on jo crec que el debat, la transferència de coneixement, les experiències, les innovacions seran cabdals per poder definir el futur ja no només de les nostres illes, sinó el futur del turisme en general. Tinguent en compte que la pandèmia no anul·larà el turisme, al baix del meu entendre. El que farà és intentar veure noves maneres de fer el turisme. El sol i platja encara serà molt important, però per nosaltres també serà important manifestar interessos de tipus cultural, de tipus inclús folclòric, de tipus cultural i científic. Per tant, jo crec que el turisme continuarà existint, les ganes de viatjar encara seran més fortes quan superem aquesta pandèmia i que els que siguin capaços d'intentar preveure per on anaran els nous desafiaments turístics seran aquells que possiblement tindran també les millors oportunitats. Vostès tindran aquesta oportunitat de compartir, de debatre i tant de bo en sortin resultats que els que han de prendre decisions, en aquest cas les institucions polítiques, però també a nivell d'empresa, tinguin en compte les resolucions d'aquesta sessió de l'INTO, d'aquesta innovació disruptiva que significarà per repensar el turisme. Moltes gràcies per convidar-nos com a universitat a participar i moltes gràcies també per convidar-me en aquesta sessió inaugural que sempre és de bons desitjos, però en aquest cas estic segur que també seran de bones realitats de cara a futur. Moltes gràcies.
Muchas gracias, rector. Ahora quería dar la palabra a la directora general de Innovación del Gobierno de las Islas Baleares, la señora Núria Riera, a la cual hemos perdido antes por un problema de conexión y yo creo que ya tenemos recuperado. Núria.
Hola, voy a hablar en castellano porque así lo están pidiendo muchos panelistas por el tema de la traducción. Sí, no es que yo no me he dado cuenta que me había quedado sin conexión y yo he hecho toda mi charla. Como ya han ido hablando el comité científico, el rector, ya han ido contando muchas de las cosas, no os las voy a repetir. Simplemente deciros que estamos en esta 15ª edición del seminario INTO, en este nuevo formato online que nos lleva algún problemilla, como habéis visto, pero que a la vez nos hace llegar a muchos sitios a la vez, ¿no? En este momento, hoy nos han dicho que tenemos 600 personas inscritas de diferentes países, no solo de España, ¿no? Así que eso es una ventaja a la que tenemos que aprovechar y probablemente para futuras ediciones ya nuestra modalidad será mixta, ¿no? Presencial y siempre ya tendremos este formato online para poder llegar a todos. Nada, simplemente deciros que quiero dar las gracias a todo el comité científico, a la doctora Marta Jacob, al doctor Joan Mulet, al doctor Diego Molina, al doctor Joan Enric Capellà y a todo el equipo de INTO de la Fundación BIT por hacer una realidad este seminario. Tengo que decir que son un equipo que funciona muy bien juntos, llevan ya 15 ediciones trabajando juntos y ya son un equipo consolidado que además trabajan todo el año para conseguir que el seminario tenga esta proyección internacional, tenga esta proyección de transferencia de conocimiento desde los centros de investigación, las universidades, los centros tecnológicos a las empresas, al sector productivo, a la cadena de valor del turismo para que lleguemos a tener un turismo cada vez más sostenible, cada vez más productivo y con estos nuevos modelos disruptivos que nos proporcionan las tecnologías emergentes como son inteligencia artificial, blockchains, etcétera. Que de todo esto nos hablará ahora Tracy Harwood. No quiero terminar mis agradecimientos sin dar las gracias a una persona de nuestro equipo de la Fundación BIT, que es Marcos Rodríguez, que a pesar de tener un familiar muy enfermo en el hospital desde hace muchos meses y ahora ya bastante mal, él ha seguido trabajando para que esto sea una realidad. Así que le quiero dar las gracias. Y nada, muchas gracias a todos por estar ahí. Espero que todas las charlas realmente sean muy provechosas. Ah, y una cosa que se me olvidaba, que la novedad este año con la universidad es que tenemos un concurso de ideas innovadoras que desarrollamos para promover un poco la cultura innovadora entre los estudiantes, los recién licenciados. Queremos promover esa cultura innovadora, el talento joven y el emprendimiento en el sector turismo, en el sector TIC, en todas aquellas empresas de la cadena de valor de la industria turística de la mano de la universidad. Así que animo a la gente, a los estudiantes que nos están viendo ahora, a los recién licenciados, a aquellas personas que quieren emprender en el mundo del turismo, que nos manden sus ideas. Muchas gracias a todo el mundo.
Muchas gracias, directora general. Gracias a todos. Now I'm going to switch to English to introduce Dr. Tracy Harwood. She has a quite long curriculum, so I just tried to summarize a little bit. She's a Bachelor of Arts in Marketing and Computer Science by the Montfort University. She also holds a PhD in negotiation in buyer-seller relationships at the same university. And right now she's the Deputy Director of the Institute of Creative Technologies and at the Montfort University. It's a pleasure for all of us to introduce and have the chance to hear the talk of Dr. Tracy Harwood. So please, Dr. Harwood.
Thank you very much, and thank you also to the hosts for inviting me to Keynote today. Do you want me to begin, or are you going to say anything else, or you want me to begin? Cool. Okay. All right. So I will start my presentation. I will stop my video in just a moment. I just wanted to say, as I said, thank you very much for inviting me to Keynote today. I hope you are all well, and I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person to enjoy your fabulous islands. So I'm going to stop my video so I do not distract you, and begin. Sorry, I need to share my screen. Okay. Okay, 1 second whilst I move that out of the way. Okay, so we will have opportunities to ask questions after my presentation. Unfortunately, my Spanish is not good, so I'm reliant on the interpreters, so bear with me for any translation requirements that I might need. I think you can drop questions into the chat as we progress, so one of the team will pick those up as we go along. I am going today to be looking broadly at technological advancements and their potential impacts on the tourism and hospitality sector. I'm not a sector specialist, but I do work extensively with cultural and creative industries, particularly here in the UK, and have been involved with the development of creative technologies practices, technological advancements, through my work here at the Institute of Creative Technologies since 2006, before which I was working in the Faculty of Business and Law as a marketing academic, and prior to that I have experience from working in industry. Okay, what I'm going to be talking about today is some recent technological advancements. Many of these are not new to you, but some of the issues that arise from the simultaneous advancement might be things that you need to think about. So I'm going to be talking about integration and challenges associated with these technological advancements after my very brief introduction in terms of the tourism and hospitality sector in general. You'll be obviously very familiar with this. There are many different types of tourism classified into various distinct categories according to the purpose of travel, whether that's inbound or outbound, which includes recreational and leisure tourism, where the focus is on people spending their leisure time doing interesting or relaxing things, cultural tourism, which satisfies cultural intellectual curiosity and involves visits to ancient monuments, places of historical or religious importance, etc. Sports and adventure trips, where people travel with a view to playing sport or of one sort or another, such as golf or skiing or hiking. Health tourism, where people travel for medical treatment or visit places where there are curative or therapeutic possibilities, for example, to springs or for yoga. And then there is more of a business side to this, where you're talking about tourism related to conventions or events and business, where people tend to travel related to their work, and incentive tourism, where trips are offered as incentives by companies to dealers and salesmen who achieve high targets in their sales. All of these necessitate planning from the industry side for everything from various modes of transportation and other tourism-related infrastructure, tourist information, marketing and promotion, communities within the visitor's destination, as well as political and institutional frameworks that enable and facilitate tourism. And suffice to say, there isn't any aspect of the sector that has not or will not be touched by the current suite of technological advancements. And that was without consideration of the current COVID context that we're all trying to work through with as little damage to the economy as possible. None of the technological advancements, as I mentioned, will be unfamiliar to you. And I know previous INTO seminars have discussed specifics of some of these, but here's the key challenge. Many of these are beginning to scale all at once. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on some of these to discuss what they are and their implications now. With this particular slide, which I have taken from a paper that I wrote with some colleagues, which was published last year. What I'm trying to do here is summarize the landscape that I'm actually talking about. On the left, in blue, the technological advancements that I think you'll be familiar with. In the pink box, what I'm referring to here, again, things that you will not be unfamiliar with. These are basically synthesizing initiatives, which are assemblages of technologies that are being used. And on the right, some of the key examples of how these technological advancements are being rendered into use between suppliers and customers, with the horizontal lines representing broadly the current focal applications. Although I'll talk to you about only a few of these, that they're very self-explanatory. It's collectively that the technological advancements represent what I would call a tsunami of impact, not just on the ecosystem of businesses in the sector, but importantly on customers and their behaviors. Let me start with 5G. 5G, bear with me. 5G is a wireless telecommunications system which will influence the speed at which large volumes, gigabits of data will be transferred across mobile networks. 5G will provide the infrastructure for ambient intelligence, interconnectivity, and the Internet of Things, leading to a higher level of customer engagement. It will lead to new types of streaming services that use rich data and game, such as film and game. Applications will empower both customer and machine-to-machine interactions, and it will underpin the advancement of autonomous devices or agents, mission-critical systems, and smart environments. It comprises a number of different advancements that include a new array of microwave relay antenna, which is the base image that I was just showing you there. Edge computing services that connect data from remotely located sensors to wireless devices, which reduces latency in cloud-based applications. And where am I? And new types of video delivery services that are likely to compete against existing channels such as Netflix, Amazon, and anything else that you might have locally. 5G's immediate impact on service industries will be the speed of online content delivery to which customers and support, content delivery to customers and support of Internet of Things connectivity. Its wide-scale use will enable rapid adoption of services that make use of urban automated networks, such as the IoT and autonomous devices. Predicted societal impacts are on rural and urban integration, decentralization of work, reduced mobility needs, energy efficiencies, increased security, and generally, in theory, enhanced life expectancy will be delivered through the development of service ecosystems that will bring different actors together to deliver value for customers and consumers. Artificial intelligence is an assemblage of technological advancements that take actions which appear to simulate human intelligence. In its current state of development, AI is a narrowly applied decision support tool with potential applications to a broad range of business operations. This includes workflow planning and optimization, fraud detection, error reduction, optimization of connected machines, automated vision-based problem identification, and cybersecurity. Increasingly, it will include natural language processing for machine translation and sentiment analysis, for example, machine learning for recommender systems, data mining and learning, including reinforced, supervised and unsupervised learning contexts, expert systems for case-based reasoning, responding through speech synthesis, natural language generation, and robot automation. Systems control through application programming interfaces or APIs, and computer vision and hearing for everything from speech, handwriting, characters, image, and facial recognition. The key line on this slide, I haven't got a video here. Thank you for asking. This is really just what I wanted to illustrate here. The key point on this slide and the key comment here is this line here, the second line down, which defines what AI is. And all these applications hint at AI's likely future pervasiveness. Expectations for its adoption and impact on types of services offered and business processes supported are considerable in information-intensive industries, such as financial professional, healthcare, public sector, energy, and media telecoms, as well as consumer-facing sectors. AI application is anticipated to be in all types of activities, including information and operations management, research and development, finance and accounting, supply chain management, strategy, sales, marketing, customer services, pretty much everything. Different types of AIs are evolving, and some of these are only just on the design drawing boards. And we all call these narrow, general, and super AIs. We're familiar with narrow AIs. In fact, all current AIs are narrow in application. It means they have a specific task. Even Google DeepMind's AlphaGo, which demonstrated what it called a general form of intelligence, is actually only demonstrating a narrow application. It can only play chess. And when it's trained to do other things, similarly, it is only then narrow in its application. It's only when things start to get more sophisticated, that they can do multiple things at different times, that we are talking about more a general level of intelligence. And specifically, we will recognize these as reactive, for example. An example of reactive is in the use of facial recognition. So where the technology is identifying specific features of those features of a face. This technology is becoming more sophisticated. Moving along the continuum there, now we have examples where the technology is not just using specific features, but learning about those features, so it can recognize a range of different faces. And to give you an example of the application of that kind of technology, I've got an interesting example to show you. This is nothing to do with tourism, but what it illustrates is how a particular type of artificial intelligence is being used. This is an example using a very old video, one of the very first videos to be made, a film by the Lumiere brothers, who I'm sure you'll have heard of. It illustrates a snowball fight, which was filmed in Lyon in 1896. And it's been restored using a general adversarial network, a type of learning algorithm that fills in the gaps of the old content, which basically means it's enhanced the image contrast, and it's also colorized the footage. Let me play this for you, give you an overview of what it's doing. So the same technologies are what we are seeing now being used in to create deepfakes. Perhaps a less acceptable use of the technology, but also one that is not unsurprising, given that we can never predict what people might do when they are given new tools to work with, and frankly, no framework to deal with them. That's what we're up against with artificial intelligence at this moment in time. This particular example was created by a Spanish director of a mobile gaming company based in Barcelona. And the package that he used, which is widely available, you can try it for yourself, is called Deoldify. I recommend you have a go with it. It's quite good fun. So moving back to my examples of artificial intelligence, general AI assimilates what I would call human level intelligence. We're nowhere near this at this moment in time. In fact, that little white line that I've drawn there, the dotted line, is an example of where we're at the moment, I think, in terms of the development of AI. General AI, though, when we get to that point, will incorporate what we call a theory of mind and self-awareness, as well as the ability to respond with empathy to a human. And the latter example, I'm sure you're very familiar with this example as well, is what we call a superintelligence. And that assumes that AI has capability well beyond human intelligence. And in fact, all it probably needs to do is remember accurately everything that we've ever done, and it will have achieved that. The latter two examples, I think, are many years from realization, but the former two are already widely in use. For example, in chatbots such as Siri and Alexa. They are now widely adopted in customer-facing service robots, which process large amounts of data to deliver routinized tasks. And here we've got some examples of virtual greeters. You can see AIs being used in everything from call centers. They've been used for many years in automated voice-activated greeters, and also robotics, animations, or animatrons, I beg your pardon, are relatively recent, but the UK speaking clock, for example, has been around since the 1940s. These things are used in a variety of social contexts. Their reliability has been a challenge in the past, but other factors such as the uncanny valley effect, where people are unsettled by the behavior of the device, or intervention and its anthropomorphic representation, where it feels creepy, are some of the challenges with these kinds of technologies. And then we have newer advancements with things like holographics, which are being used in everything from venue management, retail, receptions, and marketing ploys. Suffice to say, many of these have been marketing gimmicks in the past rather than mainstream, but their reliability and with some of the underpinning technologies means that these are now viable options to use as customer service interfaces. Moving on, let's have a look at RFID. Well, another technology that you'll be very familiar with, RFID, radio frequency identification technology, uses local storage on small microchip-sized devices enabled with near-field communications. These devices sense, store, and transmit environmental data. An already widely used technology, it is embodied within everything from credit cards and passports, transport systems, tolls, security systems, products, hotel keys, airport luggage systems, as well as pets and pretty much anything that you can think of, you can get RFID tagged these days. In conjunction with reading devices, such as smartphones and local access machines, RFID renders data held on a chip to be used in increasingly sophisticated ways, particularly when it is overlaid with AI technology. For example, in recognizing proximity with a geographical positioning system or a GPS, applications that track movement and time facilitate a breadth of location-based services. RFID embedded with sensors now underpins smart environments, which facilitate resource and operational efficiencies and also supports real-time customer engagement strategies, at least in theory. RFID is a key component of the Internet of Things, which is an emergent suite of applications and sensor-based technologies that are positioned to result in a plethora of new services when the data is stitched together through, say, for example, mobile devices and application program interfaces. So let's have a look at those. Mobile devices and smartphones integrate mobile telephony and microcomputing capability. They are used by 3.5 billion, over half of the world's population today, and in fact became the dominant form of internet access in 2018. Smartphones have rapidly become a tool of choice by consumers, although the first smartphone was launched as late as 2007. That's not even long enough to update the road signage in my local villages. They are increasingly sophisticated technology assemblages that include cameras, recorders, GPS, sensor and wireless technology, as well as hosting a range of APIs and applications. Increasingly, they incorporate the capability to respond to individual users through facial, voice, and movement recognition technology. They can become projectors and holographic displays and merge with wearables as they become more physically flexible in their design. They underpin the adoption of VR and 5G. I beg your pardon, VR and AR, augmented reality and virtual reality, as 5G will enable faster, richer content to be transmitted, assimilating what I would call near real-time telepresence. Coupled with the development of new types of sustainable battery materials, for example, graphene or solar or hydrogen or kinetic energy, access to charging and energy resources will also change, which in turn will influence their further adoption and use. And then we have another class of mobile device, the wearables. I'm not going to talk about insidables, which is yet another class of device, but we'll focus on the wearables for now. Wearables are a class of smart mobile device that typically employ a unique platform interface design, such as a watch or a tattoo or a bracelet. Their ability to augment the person extends human capability, and increasingly smartphones will interact with their context using information proactively to feel the personalized context of their owners. For example, it will feel how the person is responding in their environment. It will use that information to book favorite restaurants when a person's schedule allows it in that physical space. They will also reactively address unpredicted incidents in the environment, such as heavy traffic or a cancelled flight. And in fact, what these devices will become is a digital concierge, which will interact dynamically with all the resources available to optimize a person's individual experience, which makes you look at the mobile device in a slightly different way, I think. Moving on, applications or apps, along with APIs, render smartphones and wearables usable. They are designed as third-party interfaces to sit over platform technologies such as hardware and operating systems. Although a familiar and well-used suite of technologies, the ongoing development of app-accelerated pages, directly influenced by Google's Open Access Accelerated Mobile Pages project, is envisaged to considerably enhance their performance. It is this technology that makes the use of future augmented reality and virtual reality content possible, particularly for service management. This is likely to result in new mobile-enabled engagement strategies in everything from military, healthcare, and engineering to services and education. On the App Store, for example, there are hundreds of recommended travel and tourism-related apps on everything from destination points of interest, maps, personal travel guides, transport services, language and currency converters, as well as specific hotel service providers. Many of these offer relatively low level of interaction, but the new classes of app that I'm talking about here, enabled through the technology developments that I've just mentioned, will significantly enhance their utility. And then let's have a look at cryptocurrency and blockchain. Again, something that you will probably be very familiar with. Cryptocurrency is a collective term for peer-to-peer transaction of digital currency over the internet that incorporates anti-counterfeiting measures. The term is a conflation of cryptography and currency. It provides a verifiable and secure track record of exchanges. Cryptos are created and controlled by algorithms that specify how transactions are made and recorded, and how new tokens or coins are created and transferred. Each coin is created with a unique identifier using cryptography, which is added to as it is transferred and exchanged. Peers themselves are a key part of the process of recording and verifying all transactions made with each coin, and effectively act as a collective bank. The process of recording is built into a blockchain or a cipher. Blockchain is a form of a digital, what I would call a decentralized ledger technology. It is a growing list of records or blocks that are linked or chained together using cryptos. The principle is that once written, blocks cannot be altered, though that's not strictly true. Blockchains are publicly readable and distributed over networks of computers, which therefore means it has no centralized authority. Collectively, it is the community holding the blocks that verifies authenticity of the chain. Cryptos, since their emergence in 2009 with Nakamoto's Bitcoin, have become, have become a form of common tender and are now traded on stock markets around the world. As a consequence of their scarcity and value, they are positioned as a digital commodity and traded much like gold and silver. The various developments in cryptos, of which there are literally thousands in existence, for example, Ethereum, Ripple, Litecoin, and numerous others, enable new forms of transaction to take place without standard market-based intermediaries, such as banks and government bodies, as well as the attendant financial and professional services aligned to them. So there are challenges and risks with their use. They are a disruptive influence in commerce for the development of contracts and value-based exchanges between customers and firms, even when there is limited trust between those parties. In favor of its use, there is no longer any need to worry about fraudulent exchanges or payments, allegedly, because it is only possible to use crypto coins, which by inference authenticate ownership through the transparency of blockchain records. Supposedly, this makes service transactions straightforward and efficient. Next, let me have a look at some synthesizing initiatives. Let's start with gamification. Again, something I think you will also have heard of. This is a pervasive movement predicated upon the incredible success of the computer game sector to engage consumers around the world with what I would call ludological or game-based experiences. Gamification is the use of game mechanics, that's leaderboards, achievement badges, goals, competition, in non-game environments such as websites, employee engagement processes, customer retention strategies, marketing, branding. The approach exploits the technological advancements identified, including various new devices, AIs, virtual reality, augmented reality, etc., etc. Game developers, though, it builds on the game industry. Game developers have long been the testbed for development of new hardware or devices, such as VR headsets and haptic devices, devices that you use with your hands and with body movement. As early adopters in their use, many game players have learned new skills that easily transfer to non-play environments. And these days, most people, young and old, play computer games of one sort or another. Gamification has a wide range of applications and support functions and has great potential for tourism and hospitality. It can contribute to rewarding interactions and high-level satisfaction, leading to increased brand awareness and loyalty for tourism destinations and organizations. Thus, I would say there is a growing interest in augmented reality, virtual reality, location-based services, and autonomous devices, where AIs that learn about how people play or interact in gamified contexts can be used to help create more customer-centric experiences. And here, for example, I've got some examples of how that's being used in the sector. Visit guides with a narrative to engage citizens and encourage them to explore the cityscape. This one's based on Ghent. Having fun in cityscapes. This one is based in the UK. In fact, I'm about to commission the Hello Lamppost for one of my projects for the city of Leicester. And it basically activates street furniture and objects in the city streetscape, if you like, where people can sort of interact and have fun with those objects. And another example is a Pokemon Go style augmented reality experience, a game based on a city streetscape. But gaming platforms are themselves quite interesting. So it's not just gamification that you're seeing, but the use of gaming platforms to do novel and interesting things. So it's different to gamification. And it's basically recognizing that they have the ability to facilitate rendering of 3D environments that can make visit experiences accessible, which may be useful for planning visits or supporting actual visits, or entirely replace visits. And frankly, that's what we're seeing a lot of at this current moment in time. It's I'd say exploded in use over the last few months when physical visits have not been possible. Many destinations are now creating virtual tours, and some of those real destinations are even being included in familiar games as playful experiences as well. Here, for example, we have the Met in New York, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, using a game engine to create this virtual experience. But there are literally hundreds of these. The Uffizi Gallery in Florence, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, the Louvre in Paris, the Acropolis in Athens, the British Museum in London, and the State Hermitage in St. Petersburg. But why stop here? And in fact, you don't need to stop at the museum door. This is Oculus's home page of virtual tours, which is available now and owned by Facebook. When you look at these, they represent just about every class of tourism I mentioned in my first slide, perhaps with the exception of incentive-based tourism for now. And let me add to this. Let me show you another interesting example of how game is disrupting the physical and the real. This is Fortnite. Fortnite is produced by Epic Games using its Unreal Engine, which, by the way, is being used by everything from virtual film production to creative sandboxes and virtual retail, with a customer interface in the automotive industry. I've got a little video that I want to show you about Fortnite in use. I'll play it in just a second, it's a little bit loud. In February 2019, Fortnite held its first in-game, non-game experience. It was a music concert. I'll let you enjoy this little clip. Just bear with me a moment. What's interesting about that is, yes, it was hosted in the game, but Marshmallow's concert performance attracted an audience of 10 million, and has subsequently led to the launch of a whole new type of proposition using game platforms, not just in the entertainment sector, but also for businesses in general wanting to do meetings in interesting environments beyond Zoom, for example. I've seen meetings taking place in Red Dead Redemption, in Half-Life Alyx, and in Minecraft. You've probably tried it yourself. Fortnite, for example, now has plans for more events using a permanent music venue in its Party Royale mode of play. In fact, a number have already taken place. Furthermore, game technology doesn't have to look like a game, and its use as a 3D space for experiences, including virtual sandbox or creative experience, is only going to continue. And here is an example of VR game, 3D game environments being used in just such a way. This is BMW developing new cars. I doubt we'll ever reach the Player One style of dirty caravan physical immersion sites, however, but I do think that nowadays what we're looking at...
Sorry, Tracy. Yes, Tracy, we can hear you.
Yes. You can't hear me?
No. Is the volume?
I've not touched the sound.
The sound of your computer is slow.
I can't do anything about it, I'm afraid. Can you hear me?
Could you up the volume of your computer?
Can you hear me now?
Up the sound of your computer?
Can you hear me now?
No. We hear low. Now? Test now, please.
Hear me?
No.
No? Can you hear me?
We hear you, but low. The sound of your microphone is low. Or...
No, it's not changed. Can you hear me now? Display audio. Does that sound better?
Well, test, please.
Can you hear me now?
Now, okay.
Now better?
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Apologies. Okay. Let me go back to my presentation. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's okay, Tracy.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yes, okay, so what I was saying was the virtual world is now your oyster. And in fact...
Well, actually, sorry, Tracy, we couldn't hear you since you stopped the Fortnite video, since the Marshmallow concert. Can you go back till this moment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Bear with me. So, what I was saying here was that the Marshmallow concert is interesting because it attracted an audience of 10 million people. And has subsequently led to the launch of a whole new type of proposition using game platforms, not just in the entertainment sector, but also for businesses in general, wanting to meet in more interesting environments than, say, Zoom. And the examples I gave you here were Red Dead Redemption, Half-Life Alyx, Minecraft, and Fortnite itself has plans for more events using permanent music venue in its Party Royale mode of play. Furthermore, game technology doesn't have to look like a game, and its use as a 3D space for experiences, including virtual sandbox for creative experiences is only going to continue. And that was my example of BMW using it to design new cars and the layout of the interior of new cars in this particular example. Then what I said was, I don't think we will ever reach Player One's style of dirty caravan-based physical immersion sites, at least not in the foreseeable future. But the virtual world, I think, is now your oyster. All it needs is imagination and some accessible technology. And the launch recently of Quest 2, in my view, is a game changer. It renders real-time, tetherless. And
Tracy, we've lost you. We've lost you. I don't know what happened. Yes, now.
Can you hear me now?
No. Sorry, we can't hear you.
I can't hear her.
We hear you from very, very far away.
No.
Yes, we can hear Tracy also.
Yes, I can hear her quite well.
Okay.
So maybe it's a problem in Fundación Bit.
Yes, I think it's a problem in Fundación Bit. Because
Okay, sorry for interruption, sorry.
Okay, I'll continue. Okay, so what I was saying, Quest 2 is a game changer. It's going to be supporting real-time experiences. It's tetherless. You can have haptic experience with it. It will be integrating various other kinds of technologies, and frankly, it's a lot cheaper at this moment in time than most flights within the EU. It will probably be the #1 buy this Christmas in the game and virtual reality sector at around £300, say €350. Although, of course, the challenge with it, it does need a Facebook account to use it. I think it will be compelling for those thinking about how to continue to socialize, since friends can now mix in virtual spaces with this kit, all, of course, orchestrated by Facebook. And what's interesting is the streaming channels beyond game, which are beginning to think about how that social experience evolves. And just this week, for example, I received information from Disney, which has just launched its group watch service. Again, a game-based phenomenon. So quite interesting developments in terms of the synthesizing of all these technologies. Let's have a look at what that means for us in terms of integration. And taking these kinds of technologies forward, what I've used here is stakeholder theory, which suggests that any actor has an influence on others and is capable, others who are capable of creating value, which in the complex context I have just described is worth remembering. Within a network context, value is determined by the sharing of resources such that each party benefits in some way. In the city, region, or country's cultural context, it implies that an approach is inherently relational, where the interconnections between people, devices, spaces, buildings, brands, all create a vast ecosystem that encompasses the interconnections between the physical, virtual, and social realms. Viewed from a layered perspective, the infrastructure is owned and managed by multiple parties and firms, from firms to public sector organizations to governments and private investors. The experiences within the ecosystem are co-created by people acting in multiple roles, such as citizen, visitor, participant, consumer, but also employee, investor, politician. In this diagram, you can see that each stakeholder has a role to play in connecting their propositions with others in the ecosystem. And now let's have a think about how you layer the technologies I've been talking about into this process. So here you can see the role of these emerging technologies. You can begin to realize their pervasiveness and the nature of them and how they will interact with these layers. As businesses, we have increasing sight of the real person, and we see them only through their digital twins, rendered by the technology infrastructure on their personal technology realm. but it is the business that needs to connect the technological infrastructure and compete in a virtual space as well as the physical. Let me explain what I mean a bit further. Let's take, for example, the personal tech realm. Here you can see that a huge array of devices are now available, everything from head-mounted gear, using eye tracking, wrist-mounted gear, body-mounted gear, and so on. Each of these devices is capturing data about the person's state and how happy they are, how stressed they are, how fit they are, how healthy they are. Absolutely everything is being captured. But these technologies contribute to creating a digital twin of the person. I beg your pardon, but the data gathered from each of these technologies is given to multiple organizations, and some may have more of it and some may have less of it. And currently, for example, no one has oversight of everything. The data provides each with unique insights into behavioral patterns of individuals, which in turn is typically used to push promotions of one sort or another back to the individual. And that's typically rendered through apps and devices, mostly using connected smartphones. Interestingly, hang on, I'm losing my mouse here. Interestingly, these will increasingly use virtual space convergences, such as the ones that I've been talking about. These will be rendered usable through immersive technologies such as virtual reality and augmented reality, including in social contexts, such as the new Facebook and Disney experiences mentioned previously. Let's move to the technology infrastructure. Again, this is something you'll be very familiar with, I'm very sure of that. If we think about what we mean by a sensorized city, the technology infrastructure has multiple layers over physical space, and it's incredibly complex and potentially all-encompassing. Drawing on a few examples from Barcelona, sensors have been used, for example, for LED-based street lighting, which is now more energy efficient and reduces the heat produced by the old lamps, which has led to cost savings. With the help of sensors, the system also receives information regarding pollution, humidity, temperature, the presence of people and noise. Sensors are also used in waste disposal. They use smart bins that use a vacuum and suck the waste into underground storage, which helps to reduce the smell of trash waiting to be collected and the noise pollution from collection vehicles. It also enables the city to detect the level of waste that comes from different places and to optimize the collection of waste, which decreases both the resources and time needed for this service. Meanwhile, the incineration of waste is used afterwards to produce energy for heating systems. Sensors are also used in the city's bike system. It's a public bicycle sharing initiative, which reduces the number of cars circulating in the city, and its bus transit system, which is noted for its sustainable mobility and decreasing emissions with the help of hybrid buses. That system is also using smart bus shelters, utilizing solar panels to provide energy for screens that show waiting times. It also uses noise sensors where, for example, the residents of Barcelona's Plaza del Sol who had complained about the nighttime noise for decades, used sensors to detect air pollution, noise levels, humidity and temperature, which in turn proved the noise levels were almost 100 decibels, which was well beyond the level recommended by the World Health Organization. And that in turn helped residents to get their case supported by the City Council, pressing them to rethink about the use of the plaza. Sensors are used also in an irrigation system, where various sensors are in the ground providing live data on humidity, temperature, wind velocity, sunlight, and atmospheric pressure. That means that that gardeners decide what the plants need and can adapt their schedule to avoid overwatering. Ultimately, it was estimated that the city can earn back its initial investment in the sensors by the end of a year, when they could cut water usage by their suggested by up to 1/4. Alongside this, the city has a network of Fab Labs. Barcelona was the first city in the world to have public network of Fab Labs, which are small-scale workshops offering personal digital fabrication. The premise of that enterprise was quite simple. There is no smart city without smart citizens. Therefore, it was considered important that they can participate in the changes at grassroots level. This infrastructure is facilitated by the Internet of Things, comprising, as I said, sensors, real-time monitoring stations, digital cameras, actuators, real-time tracking systems, big data analytical techniques, information and communication technologies, cloud computing, smart grid, AI, autonomous shuttles, and other digital appliances with physical objects that characterize an urban context. And as you will be aware, the IoT is specifically aimed at improving the efficiency of resource usage, but it is clearly a complex assemblage involving multiple stakeholders. Next, let's consider how the virtual infrastructure may evolve with the advancement of technologies I've been talking about. Okay, so I'm going to show you another video. This is actually an artwork that's been produced by a Brazilian artist called Matsuda. It's an imaginary work rather than a real example, but it's interesting because what it illustrates is how integration of the technologies discussed may be seen from the customer perspective. It's not a tourist example per se, but you will see the analogy. Let me play you the video and we can perhaps pick it up shortly.
Bastante. Apúrate si quieres una buena calificación.
Voy lo más rápido que puedo.
¿Has pensado en correr? Es saludable y eficiente.
Seguro que no hay más trabajos disponibles. Estudio para ser profesora y estoy haciendo mercados.
Y además puedes quedarte con los puntos de fidelización. Eres una multiafortunada. Tienes que confiar en la aplicación. ¿Te sientes inspirada? Gracias. Chao.
¿Quién soy yo? No, eso no es lo que quiero decir. ¿Para dónde voy? No, puedo volver a empezar. Olvídalo.
Estoy presente ahora. Y me amo. Estoy libre de mi ira. Estoy libre de mi tristeza. De la fuerza de mis
Bueno. Hola otra vez. Ay, no, cállate. ¿Qué está pasando? Emilio. ¿Qué puedo hacer por usted? ¿Qué está pasando? Mis puntos están bien. No se preocupe, sus puntos están seguros conmigo. ¿Le puedo ayudar en algo más, Emilio? Yo no soy Emilio, yo soy Juliana Restrepo. Por favor, espere.
Hola, Juliana Restrepo. Me alegra verte. ¿Qué puedo hacer por ti?
Mis puntos están bien. ¿Qué está pasando?
Tranquila, todo está bien. Parece que alguien está intentando vulnerar su cuenta. Por favor, espere mientras reinicio su dispositivo. Hola, Juliana. Me alegra verte. Hoy te ves hermosa. ¿Estás estrenando zapatos?
Ya lo arreglaron. Tengo que seguir trabajando.
Estoy trabajando en eso, pero necesito verificar tu información biométrica. Por favor, sigue la línea azul hasta el centro de servicio más cercano para confirmar tu identidad.
Sí, pero mis puntos están bien.
Todo está bien. Chao.
¿Qué? ¿Qué es esto? ¿Qué? ¿Qué está pasando? No, mis puntos, mis puntos. ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué es eso?
It's quite a provocative and kaleidoscopic vision of the future where physical and virtual realities have merged and the city has become saturated with media. God forbid that we should get to this stage, but I think it's quite an interesting example of what the virtual infrastructure that I've been talking about may possibly render for customers. And by the way, that film was released in 2016, so it's not new by any means. Moving on, I've got about 8 more slides, so if you can bear with me, that would be great. Okay. Sorry, having trouble with slides here. Okay, so in summary, I think what you get the feeling of here from what I've been talking about, these layers, is that you can sort of view the environment in multiple different ways. And this is another example of the same point, but viewed from slightly different perspective. Many organizations are, of course, beginning to think about the their environment and their position within it in this particular way. And this example is from Magic Leap, who do augmented reality, or who did augmented reality glasses. Let's have a talk now about some of the challenges then. I have a few thoughts on this. I'm sure you have your own. Firstly, I think one of the key challenges is making sense of the technological environment. It's increasingly challenging, especially for small businesses. Which configuration should you use? How should service offers be aligned with emerging technologies? What aspects of the digital twin consumer is relevant for you, and how do you get hold of that information are kind of key things to think about. On the plus, one potential area of advantage of achieving technological integration is in the potential to develop sustainable tourism. And that's something that was mentioned in the introduction today by a number of people. Whilst the industry clearly leads to economic gains, it is also noted to degrade both the local environment and social infrastructure. So environmental resources become overused, poor management practices or limited information disclosure and poor monitoring of actions encourage the perpetuation and extension of environmental problems. With better understood parameters and use of such technologies as highlighted in the overview of the Internet of Things, for example, it may be possible to develop management tools that can provide an ecosystem of businesses with a continuous flow of timely, relevant, accurate, and objective information about the environmental impact of critical initiatives, which at least then have the potential to be useful in making appropriate decisions. Another consideration is actually the convergence of virtual and physical, as I've been at pains to point out today. It's only going to continue to evolve. Game has a lot to do with that, but all of the technologies I've discussed contribute to that phenomenon. Let me show you what I mean. Here, I'm attempting to illustrate that the technologies are focused on or as near real time as currently feasible. But even at this stage of advancement, we see convergence between screen and life-scale experiences, encompassing passive and interactive aspects using narrative and navigated tools which are immersive and creative. The movement is beyond mere participation. It is also about production and co-creation. In fact, this is a diagram that I've taken from a book that I'm writing about the history of virtual production, which is going to be published next year. So let me, oh, come on. My slides are not moving. There we go. Another area of consideration, another very challenging area, I think, is what the nature of the public realm is and how that is actually changing and evolving. What we're talking about here is space that is shared communally by the public and private sector. Its access is universal and spaces have common ground and shared amenity. And these are spaces that include areas such as parks or plazas or squares, monuments, buildings, pedestrian pathways, street furniture, atriums, shopping centres, community centres, advertising hoardings, building exteriors, vehicles, transport mechanisms, and increasingly it will be people through the devices that they wear and how visible they are to other people, as well as the virtual space. These are all public realm, open for public realm access. And of course, the public realm can be permanent, semi-permanent, temporal, performative, interruptive, ubiquitous, invisible. It can be static, dynamic, evolving, and co-created. And ultimately, as I said, it's continually changing. With some of these technologies, such as artificial intelligence, for example, the challenge will be how to keep humans in the service configuration loop. And with others, it will really be how to keep places relevant. For example, the virtual museums that I showed you earlier, you're talking there about experiences without any concept of what the real space is. There's no real access to the physical space. So it's important to think about how you keep place in the loop as well. Otherwise, you might as well just be online. And then on top of that, the changing nature of stakeholders and their roles is another important factor to consider. What is the role of the public sector, the private sector, the third sector, and the individual in these kinds of systems that I've been talking about? GDPR, for example, does not go anywhere near close enough to encapsulating all the data issues that arise from the various technologies that I've been talking about and how they might become integrated. Moreover, most businesses are still thinking that the old model of data ownership is their prerogative. It is not. It's about adding value to the ecosystem using data maybe, but alongside the data issues emerges the growing complexity of cybersecurity. Every device is hackable at some level. The issue is what the consequences of that might be. And clearly where there is critical service or dependency within that service, and the result may be harm to humans and increasingly to the environment, then protection and cybersecurity becomes the central premise on which to do business. And of course, the other big factor here to think about is how on earth do you keep up with changes in consumer behavior. COVID, for example, has sped up the adoption of virtual experiences. Competition is now not only about the share of wallet you might have, but also about share of time, which despite science suggesting otherwise, for most of us it is finite. This means less time for wasting and more time for doing things that matter, whatever that is. Furthermore, making sense of customer behavior is not a trivial task and will increasingly require AIs to help make sense of the huge amounts of data that are likely to be accessible. However, most businesses are not geared towards changing their proposition that quickly to address the changes in demand which correspond to the ways in which new technologies will influence behavior. To some extent, that means AIs need to be integrated into the business proposition to facilitate decision-making, although they are not fundamentally at this stage going to instigate any of the changes. For example, making new adverts or putting those adverts in different places to help maintain the business's visibility. And I'm always minded that the business you operate should be operated with empathy and the smallest possible data that you can possibly use. So finally, does that mean we need a new way of working? Well, very possibly it does. Here, what I'm trying to illustrate is a new business model. This is not really about partnerships or conglomerates, but aggregated businesses that offer a seamless service which is greater than the sum of the parts to consumers or businesses under a single brand. From the customer perspective, they will be unaware of which part of the business, or which business indeed, is responsible for any of the potential failures that might ensue. From the firm's perspective, there will be a clear understanding and undertakings on the part of each of the components. And these components, these clouds that are included on this diagram, are not one business. They are 4 separate businesses and maybe 5 separate businesses. So the management and leadership is one business where the focus is on operations. The customer service may be another business. The data warehouse may be another business, and the AI algorithm developers may be another business. And the thing that binds these entities together is a collective risk management process and their interdependencies, each reliant on the success of the other. So it's a power dependency model derived from market forces, but based on competencies and specialism, born out of necessity of the increasingly complex technological environment. So as I said, there'll be multiple businesses in this, and frankly, we're already seeing this as a model begin to evolve, not in travel and tourism necessarily, but it's beginning to emerge in finance and insurance, and also in the automotive, particularly the autonomous side of automotive vehicular development. So that's about all I have to say. Thanks for bearing with me. I know I've overshot a little bit. Let me just put this slide back up again as a summary of my key points today. As I said, it's integration that's the key thing here. And very happy to take any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tracy Harwood. It was a spectacular presentation. Thank you. I would like to ask to you some of the questions our attendees have been written here. Okay.
Sure.
So just give me a minute just to search the first one. Okay. Okay, I think I have the first one here. I don't know who is asking this, okay? Just I'm going to throw this question. The question goes this way. Which tourist profiles or business sectors are most likely to use these technologies in their travel?
Which sectors? I suspect all sectors, in one way or another, will use these technologies. Most folks have smartphones these days. Those that don't will interact in the environment. You know, for example, they'll go into a museum and interact with the technology that they don't actually own. So at some level or another, everybody will interact with the technologies that I've been talking about. They're all a participant within the ecosystem that I'm talking about. Does that answer?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. I'm going to follow with the next one. What effect do you think the use of so much technology can have on tourists? Is it attractive to them, or can it cause them a certain amount of fear?
Well, it's like anything else. That if you're not familiar with the technologies, there's always an element of being very wary of it. But you know, most of the technologies that I'm talking about are going to be ubiquitously included in our environment. All the IoT stuff is invisible to us as users, for example, but it's the services that they render that will not be. So we may not be aware of the technologies, but we'll certainly be interacting with them. Most folks, you know, use regularly, you know, their smartphone to get about now as a GPS device, at least, not, and a camera to send to their social media accounts, you know, to interact with each other. And then when you start overlaying other types of wearable device, which may be recommended, for example, by health practitioners, if you need, you know, if you've got a health issue, you may be required or guided to wear such technology to help monitor your status. I mean, we're in this world now. We're not going to get away from it. It's how these technologies are integrated and how, as businesses, we can make use of that integration to offer services that meet the needs of customers as they become more technologically advanced, as their body becomes extended, if you like.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tracy Harwood. I would like to ask our attendees to use the Q&A system, because otherwise it's a bit hard for us to track who is asking what, and also to search through all the messages we have here in the chat section. Okay, I'm going to go with the next one. This is a little bit more business oriented. Question is, the companies will have to design two strategies, one for the digital and the human client, or can we align both? I assume that is referring to having maybe a virtual strategy and like a physical strategy.
Yes, I appreciate that question. It's a really good point. I think you have to align your physical to the virtual. If you do not keep physical space in the loop, as I was saying, let alone the people, you don't keep your physical space in that design loop for the proposition that you're offering, you will lose that connection, and then there is no reason for people to travel to you. You know, obviously that has to be done in a sustainable way, but just putting everything in a virtual space probably isn't the smartest thing to do unless you can connect it to the real and the physical. I don't know if that helps. I would certainly not develop a strategy that was separated for, you know, virtual experiences versus physical. I wouldn't do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to switch to the Q&A questions, okay, so I can tell you who is asking what. The first one is from Francesc Arcos. The question is, in Spain, many travel agencies still work as a brick and mortar businesses. Which strategy or tech tools do you recommend for those traditional companies, usually SMEs, to survive? And Francesc says, thank you, and he's a tour operator sales manager.
I think you don't have the luxury to not adopt these technologies, not least because it's your customers that are driving the demand for the technologies. I appreciate that many small businesses are just not geared to adopting the technologies in any kind of robust way. And I do think that that is where local government has to step up and support businesses to think about how they integrate these technological advancements in their service propositions. Some you won't have any choice with. For example, when 5G becomes a mainstream technology and you upgrade your smart devices to the next generation, you'll already be in that world. The applications that are being developed will already be, those accelerated devices. But things like using APIs to draw data down from publicly accessible data sets, for example, in order to develop your system and services. Those really are the roles and responsibilities, I think, of local government to support businesses to make data accessible to you so that you can develop with as near real-time information as you possibly can. But the rest is going to be demand driven, and you'll either sink or swim. You will have to adapt. You will have to use these technologies to meet the needs of your customers. I appreciate that many of you are talking about thinking of slow tourism. Bearing in mind, I'm not a tourism specialist, but slow tourism, I certainly appreciate it. There's nothing better I enjoy than getting away from technology. I don't take it everywhere with me, of course, but it's a necessity for pretty much everything else that I do. And it is for most people in the world these days. Does that help?
Thank you very much.
I'm sure it helps.
Next question is from Bel Yodra. Are all these technologies sustainable for a sustainable tourism?
Well, that's another very good question. It changes what you mean by sustainability, I think. No, I don't think they are inherently sustainable technologies. Many of them are using rare earth metals, which are not necessarily mined in the most sustainable way. However, they are with us. And if you use them, in theory at least, to make decisions which improve the efficiency and sustainability of your operations, then they become more sustainable over time because it changes what you do. So, there's a question about the production of the technologies themselves versus their use and the impact on the use of the technologies.
Thank you very much. We have two more questions. This one comes from the chat system, so I cannot know who is asking. What should be the basic equipment of a hotel room to be ready to offer this feature? I guess all these features you were talking about, 5G, TV, laptop, iPad, should be a requirement?
Well, I think you need to have a network for sure, but I would let the customer bring the technology they want to use and the devices that they have personalized around them and connect to what you offer. I wouldn't necessarily be looking to invest in providing equipment only on an exceptional basis, but access to fast networks is a given, I would have thought. You know yourself when you go to a different environment, if you can't access the information that you have prepared for your own experience, it's very frustrating. So at least help people to help themselves, as well as provide the extras in more appropriate settings.
Thank you. Nuria Riera just asked another question. Do you believe that gamification is a strategic tool for tourism? The experiences that tourists want to live on their travels create a symbiosis between gamification and tourism.
I think it's a bit of a gimmick at the moment, gamification, ludification of experiences. I don't really know what the future of gamification is. It's a marketing ploy, and in many ways, as that Matsuda example illustrated, albeit imaginary, you can see what's happening there. They're strategically locking in customers with particular offers. Personally, I tend to resist that kind of thing. I'm sure there are many people that wouldn't necessarily enjoy that kind of thing, but when the offers are of genuine value to you, which I have to say is rare, I haven't seen very many where I think that is genuinely the case, then you've got a role for gamification. But as a marketing ploy, it's a gimmick in my view. 3D game platforms, I think, are a slightly different thing, and that's not quite gamification. That's using game platforms in a different way. That's going to be the basis of augmented reality experiences. That's where you layer up information, and you can see how powerful that might be when, if you're in an environment where you're unfamiliar with the context, how using spatial computing technologies where you're interlaying the virtual with the real can enhance the experience considerably, in theory. And what does it say? So does it create a symbiosis between the virtual and the real? Yes, I think it can do in that set of circumstances, but I do think you've got to be careful with it. Try and avoid the gimmick if you can.
Thank you. We have a new question here. How can digital help us to always be in alignment with the customer's demand?
It's a customer research question. I'm afraid there's no escape from asking your customers or keeping on top of what customers need and how they're engaging with your service propositions. There is no escape from that. You have to keep doing that continually. And yes, technological advancement is it's just going in one direction. It is not going to stop. It's going to continue to go very fast. And I'm afraid our job is to make the most of what we can with the resources that we have. There's only ever going to be so much that you can do as a business. But your business is underpinned by customers who pay for what you offer. So those are the ones that you have to keep up with more than the technologies themselves.
Thank you, Tracy. Dr. Tracy, there is a question from Ricardo Baptista who wants to have a way to contact you.
Of course.
So,
shall I put it in the? Well, will you can provide that, can you? Or
I don't know if you want to just share your email or your personal webpage.
Put it in. I can drop it into the. There you go. I'm on Twitter as well. That's a quick way of and LinkedIn. Just connect. Happy to answer anything within my rough realm of expertise.
There are a couple of questions. Walter Ortega says, "What are the age of average tourist who loves the gamification?"
Well, it depends what the gamification experience is. Some of the examples, like the Pokemon Go example, that touched people of all ages, using it as a way to exercise and to interact with the environment, to collect something that was just trivial and a bit of fun. It was a gamified experience, tying the game to the physical. Where you're collecting points that are of value, it depends what the value proposition is, doesn't it? If you're using redemption points, say for your favorite restaurant, who wouldn't want to use that? Or for your, because you travel regularly, who wouldn't want to use that with your airline, your favorite airline, say, or your favorite hotel? I don't think there's an age limit on it as such. It's, obviously this technology is tied to the adoption of smart devices. Not everybody uses smart devices, which is one of the challenges, I suppose, maybe 50% of the world's population are not using smart devices. And therefore you have to think about the proposition that you might offer those people. That then becomes a bit more of a challenge. But I don't really think you can put an age limit on this. It is not just youngsters that are using these kinds of technologies. I mean, many games now are targeting the 35 to 55 age group. And I know people much older that happily play these kinds of games and use this kind of technology in just about every everyday situation that they can.
Thank you very much. There's another question about the 5G. Is it universal application available as an application, or it's necessary to use modern equipment? I guess that is an anonymous attendee, and I think that what's asking is if it's needed some extra equipment to use 5G, which of course I assume it's partially yes in some cases.
5G is it's beginning to scale. It's being adopted by cities at the moment, and what it is just more microwave antennae sitting in cityscape at the moment. But it basically will enable faster transfer of data between devices, or the download of data when you're using 5G. So for example, you can imagine if you're watching a film on a transit system, you'll be able to do that much more easily if you're in a 5G environment than you will if you're in a 4G environment. Fundamentally, 5G is what will underpin the use of autonomous vehicles, where edge computing means that data can be shifted around in as close to near time or real time as possible, which means that these devices can respond quickly as the situation unfolds. Mostly you won't be aware of it because your devices will automatically be connected through your mobile service providers. But it's about the speed at which you will access data sets or streaming data sets. Thank you very much.
Francisca Maria Morey Fernandez is asking the following question. The uncertainty due to COVID makes people reluctant to travel. Flexibility in cancellations and reservations will be the key. Or will trips be reduced to short stays in hotels in the place of residence?
Well, the whole world's in a very difficult situation now, and there isn't any of us that's not going to escape some economic turmoil as a consequence. I would envisage that whilst people will still want to go on holiday, if they can't afford it, then their lifestyles are going to be significantly restricted as a consequence of job loss, being furloughed or laid off. This, and unfortunately, I think we're in this situation for quite a long time. I would suggest years in terms of planning for economic recovery, unfortunately. But I think what that means is, there has to be a point of opportunity at which destinations which have been overcome by too many tourists, say, can think about what their strategy is for dealing with that situation and become more sustainable, focus on the things that really matter to the local people, as well as whoever the tourists are that return, and over what period of time that they return. It's not an easy situation at the moment.
Thank you very much. Alberto Lopez is asking, do you think that this is a good moment to bet on technology in tourism, counting that the majority of the companies are not used to do it, and they have serious financial problems? And when a technology is spread in many hotels, so I just can understand this sentence. The question more or less is that if this is a really good moment to bet on this kind of technology, and also if it has, I guess that what's asking is that if it has a wide adoption in the current hotels?
Is it a good time to invest in technology? Well, I think what you're seeing is a rapid change in the way that technologies are being used by customers. And, you know, you already said at the beginning of today that in future you will not hold physical conferences. And there's an example of how the impact of this current situation is changing what we do. You know, on the one hand, you're losing tourists who come to your country for the purpose of attending a conference and then go and do many other things. But on the other hand, you're gaining many more people looking at what you are doing in a different way. So, you know, it's sixes. You gotta bear in mind what it is you kind of want to achieve going forwards and in the longer term. As I said a couple of times already now, I would be very careful about thinking how you keep place in the virtual. It's a major challenge going forward, I think.
Thank you very much. We do not have more questions, so I would like to ask Director General Núria Riera just to close the session for today. Núria?
Hello. Bueno, pues muchas gracias a los asistentes. La verdad es que estamos muy contentos por la gran participación y sobre todo por la excelente ponencia de la doctora Tracy Harwood, la cual nos ha despertado muchos intereses y muchas líneas en las que podemos trabajar y en las que podemos generar esos nuevos modelos disruptivos en turismo. Muchas gracias a todos los asistentes.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias a todos. Mañana continuamos con las sesiones de INTO. Ahora os digo exactamente a qué hora. No sé si... Anne, ¿tienes la agenda a mano para la sesión de mañana?
Hola, buenas. No, la sesión no será mañana. La próxima sesión será el martes 3 de noviembre a las 12 y todas las personas que estén inscritas recibirán, como hoy, un recordatorio un día antes con el enlace donde conectarse, porque ya no será el mismo enlace que hoy y recibirán un enlace nuevo. Entonces nos vemos el martes 3 de noviembre, la semana que viene.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias, Anne, por la información y gracias a todos por vuestra participación. Thank you, Dr. Tracy Harwood. It was a spectacular talk. And see you all on next... ¿Has dicho que era el 3 de noviembre, Anne?
Sí, el 3 de noviembre.
Álvaro, sí.
Nos vemos el 3 de noviembre. Pues muchas gracias a todos.
Gracias.